I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup office is in Singapore, although we are in Sydney as well tonight. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on November 10th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. It's right below the main video window. Just look down there. Look for the chat wing window. There's a login button in the bottom or left-hand corner. You can log in with that. Of course, if we are not live, chatting there won't work, but we'd love to have you join us during the live webcast as well. If you do have questions during the live webcast, or you're listening to the recorded version and have questions, we do have an email address. You can contact us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget, you can also use the contact form that's right there on the page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just Gallup-Strengths-Center.com, for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. And you can also catch the video in both streaming and now downloadable audio. We have about 130 of these videos for you that are out there for offline listening as well. Everything you need is at our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Ann Lingenfelter is our host today. She works as a learning solutions consultant with the Gallup offices there in Sydney. And I hear that the weather is fantastic in Sydney. The weather's on its way out here in Omaha. Welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thanks, Jim. It's always great to be here. Yes, I feel like a broken record. I think every time I'm on with you, I'm telling you how beautiful it is here in sunny Sydney. But yes, yet again, another nice spring day. My guest tonight, Kenneth Tan, is based in Singapore, which is another lovely place. And I had the pleasure of meeting Kenneth not too long ago, about a month or so ago. Kenneth, I guess it was, that I visited with you in Singapore.
Yes.
Kenneth, yeah, and one thing I just found out about you that I didn't realize, Kenneth, is that you are a triathlete.
Yes, I'm a trying athlete.
You're a what?
I'm a trying athlete.
Well, I think that's fantastic, and I'll have to talk about that with you later off the show, but I just wanted to give you kudos, because doing triathlon's a tough sport, but doing it in Singapore I think would be even hotter and harder, being right there on the equator. But Kenneth is a director and adjunct faculty at the Singapore Management University. He's also the principal trainer and coach with a local consultancy called Legacy Foundation Consultancy. He became a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach in 2013 and has since coached leaders and teams in private, people, and public sectors, particularly in strengths-based leadership and team learning through strengths. He's currently, when he's not competing in triathlons, completing his PhD, and in his spare time he also volunteers for various social causes. So you sound like a very busy man, Kenneth. Welcome to Call to Coach.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again, Ann, and it's good to see you, Jim.
And Kenneth, can you start off by telling our audience what your top 5 are?
Well, my top 5, surprisingly, well, or not surprisingly, are all relationship building, empathy, connectedness, developer, individualization, and adaptability.
And when you say not surprisingly...
Well, if you know me, if you knew me, you would not find it a surprise. But you know, off the cuff, people have told me that if I didn't smile, I wouldn't seem approachable. But that really goes contrary to my top 5 strengths. I believe I am approachable. I'm not just approachable. I think I make people feel very comfortable around me.
And you said that you have ideation, what, in your top 10 somewhere?
Ideation's number 6, and arranger is 7. Positivity is 8, strategic is 9, and belief is 10.
Very good, very good. And tell us a bit about how you came to know your strengths. How did you get introduced to Gallup and to the Strengths Finder, Kenneth?
Well, it was a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2011. I have a mentor in my life, and he introduced me to the CliftonStrengths Finders. And when I first did it, and I was really intrigued by the results. First and foremost, it reassured me that I wasn't strange. I wasn't just a very talkative person who loved to just spend time with people. It assured me that my strengths were directing me in the right way. I could utilize them. I could invest in them. So he sat down with me and he gave me some time and he went through my reports, and it got me really interested in strengths and how I could use it to help others. So I became a strengths coach in 21-3, and I haven't stopped since. I've been coaching and I've been spending quality time with people, investing in their strengths, helping them to invest in their strengths and achieving success for themselves. So it's been a wonderful journey.
Were you actually a consultant prior to learning your strengths, or did you become a consultant after learning your strengths because you were inspired by it?
That's an excellent question. I was in education most of my life. After I found out about my strengths, I decided to invest in them. I decided to put more time into them, and I became a consultant in 21-3.
Very good. So now that you're working at SMU and also working at Legacy and as a consultant, what's the split for time there? Is it 50-50 or 60-40? How is it?
Well, over at the Singapore Management University where I work, it's practically a full-time job. But because this university is quite progressive, they do allow us as staff to really invest in whatever's out there in the real world, so that we can bring practical tips back to our undergraduate students. So with my consultancy, it's whenever I can find time. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, so I spend a lot of time on the phone. I also do Skype calls and conversations. But when I can spare the time and when the client is in town, I tend to want to meet face to face, because I believe that there's nothing like having that person sit in front of you and having that personal time with that person. I think that determines everything when it comes to a coaching relationship.
Absolutely. I know we talked before the show about some of the case studies that you're going to share with us today from some of your successful work with some banking clients. But before we go down that road, I just want to touch a bit about, since SMU is really your full-time job, do you have any opportunities there to share about your strengths knowledge? Do you have an opportunity to use it with students or with your colleagues there?
Oh yes, certainly. I mean, it didn't come as a surprise when we have a career services center that got in touch with me, and that's also because they've been keeping their ears on the ground about certain things that would help our undergraduates break into the job market much faster and better. And one of those things was about uncovering their strengths. So Gallup Strength Finders came in as #1, and they really wanted to have an in-house coach to help their career ambassadors. Now, these are final year students who will be entering the workforce, but have volunteered their 1 year to coach and mentor younger students. And the purpose of this is to really help them develop interview skills, but also to help them meet with prospective employers and prepare them for whatever the employer would be looking for when they enter the workforce. So I had the opportunity of working with these career champions and in helping them first uncover their strengths and apply it, and then of course achieve results. And through that journey, right now many of the champions are also helping other SMU undergraduates to prepare for success in the workforce. So yes, there are many opportunities in the Singapore Management University for strengths to flourish and grow. And I know I am in talks with you and Saurav in the Gallup office in Singapore to try to bring strengths into a more holistic way in SMU. And right now I really hope to have that opportunity to meet with the senior management and to have that discussion.
I would imagine that the faculty at SMU would take notice of the work that you're doing with the students and in the careers area and perhaps see the value from that.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, you're right. I mean, one of the things that I'm really excited about is the work that Gallup has been doing with campuses all around the world, especially in the United States. There's so much that we can learn from, so much data that has been collected, and results demonstrated. And I think that comes in very useful to be able to bring more people and certainly faculty members on board the strengths movement. So yes, you're right.
Yeah, and just to that point, Kenneth, Gallup has just recently released the second iteration of the Gallup-Purdue Index, which talks about the status of well-being and job satisfaction amongst alumni, grads in the States. There's a lot of really great information there and research data there for yourself and for others who are listening who are involved in coaching in the education side, because it talks so powerfully about the importance of having a mentor or someone that a student can speak to within the university about their hopes and dreams and get some mentoring around that. And you talked about your introduction to strengths came from a mentor like that. Do you have any opportunities at SMU to be that mentor to any students? Have you had that experience yet?
Well, yes, certainly. I am, of course, in an office that oversees all of the student affairs. So I have lots of interaction and many opportunities to interact with students. And what's really useful is that the students themselves are very intrigued about understanding and uncovering their strengths, their own strengths, but not just that, in applying it to their professional life and also their personal life to achieve success. So that has helped me to have many really good conversations with the students here. There's this almost hunger for them to want to know where's their place, utilizing their strengths, and how they could achieve results in the workforce. So I think that has helped me a lot. So certainly the Purdue Index, I've read it many times. I've shown it to many of my colleagues. The people in the alumni office are intrigued about it. The people in the other parts of the Dean of Students offices are also intrigued by it. So there's many opportunities for us to grow this more. And I'm very grateful for the Purdue Index. It has really opened my eyes. I do see the 5 key indicators towards success for undergraduates moving into their careers. And I do hope to do that study as well in the Singapore Management University. And of course that will take some time and effort, but I believe it's all worthwhile. Certainly in measuring some of these outcomes, because I'm doing my PhD now, I'm very into measuring and indicators and performance indicators.
Very good, Kenneth. What are you doing your PhD in?
Well, it's a postdoctoral. It's a doctoral degree in business administration. My main study in the literature that I'm reading is a lot on leadership development. I'm very intrigued by how certain interventions can produce leadership behaviors. So one of the things that I'm really doing using empirical analysis is to study how these interventions can produce leadership results, how leadership behaviors can come as a result of training and development. Now, it's probably not new literature, but it resonates with the strengths movement, because once you're aware of your strengths or your talents and invest in them to become strengths, they typically help you exhibit certain behaviors that would be critical to workforce performance. Now, as a coach, I do believe that all this should come naturally, especially to your top 5. But imagine if you were able to put them through a series of interventions, or what we call training sessions, to exacerbate that, to even bring that out and to grow that and to develop that full potential. So it's very in line with what we do as coaches. The only difference is that there's a lot of evidence base, and of course there's some qualitative and quantitative analysis behind it.
So can you give me an example of the types of interventions that you're talking about?
Oh, certainly. One of the things that we tried in my research was to bring educators through a 6-month program, starting with a trainers program. And what we did was we enabled them to use certain platforms. I'm a sportsman, so I tend to lean towards sports. and how we use sports and the framework of sports to uncover leadership roles and application in leadership behaviors. So when you give a person a role, that person adopts a certain value base, it adopts a certain behavioral persona that enhances his leadership qualities. So what we do is we try to correlate some of the roles to leadership behaviors to the outcomes. And in order to test and to show that it's happening, we actually also have to study their application of that in a real world situation, and also test it with the participants or the people that they've tried these leadership interventions with. Essentially, it's a experimental design model. It's really exciting for me, but I'm not sure if the audience here or Jim interested in listening to all this. It is a 90,000 word dissertation, but I'll be happy to sit down with all of you at a separate conversation and maybe to have a cup of coffee and I could talk days on this.
Look, I understand what you're saying, but I think actually that our listeners are very interested in understanding the sort of ideas behind leadership and certainly how it applies with strengths, and so there's probably if you have time, perhaps once it's published, you can put it up on Called to Coach resources tab or some points, summarize it into a nutshell and put it there, because I think that sort of thing is very, very powerful. There's a lot of great research that Gallup has done around strengths-based leadership and especially about what followers want, and understanding that trust and hope, compassion and stability are such important components of what followers look for in leaders. And are you finding your research is aligning with that as well?
Oh yes, I have some nuggets of it today, and I'd love to share it with all of you.
Yeah, definitely.
I have applied some of my research in how I coach some of my clients. You did make mention of one of my clients right now, and that's an international bank. And this bank had really just gotten me in to coach their talent pool. So there are 30 of their top talents in the banks, and many of them are, of course, have achiever in their top 5, as well as maximizer. And I put them through some of these interventions or some of these coaching sessions, and some of the tools that I used helped to measure their move from awareness to application to achievement. And one of the tools that I use, and many of us would be aware of it, is Donald Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. And I can just pull it out on the screen right now if you have some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I call it the Strengths AAA approach because I've adapted it. And right here you see Kirkpatrick's evaluation model. But what I've done is I've put strengths right at the front as the learning event. And this is where we get their awareness going about their own strengths, their reactions to the training, obviously, but then also their learning, both as a learner and for the organization that they work with. And I move them to the next phase, which is the other A, which is application. And this is where they learn to put some of the behaviors that I spoke about, whether it's the leadership behaviors or the behaviors towards what they do in the organization. And finally, in the last phase, and that's where we capture achievement and their results. This obviously was a result of them going through an action planning process. And we actually track results in terms of performance and even financial performance at the end of the day. So that's just a quick idea of what we do.
Can you leave that up for just a second? Can you leave that up for just a second? I just wanted to have a look at it and ask you some questions about it.
Sure.
Do you mind? So this is something that for those of us or the people in the audience who are listening to this, there's 4 different levels, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and it starts with a learning event where strengths initiates or does the intervention, and then it goes into awareness, into application, and then achievement. But only the first 2 are in the training environment, it looks like. The latter 2 are in the work environment. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, and that's What has happened now is you've obviously uncovered the two environments. One of the things that I really want to do as a coach is to try to apply what they've learned into their work environment, because we believe that strengths is not just for awareness, it's really also for results, and it's very important that we bring our clients into the application and achievement arena, and this really shows the power and the benefit of strengths.
So, whilst we're looking at this, the training environment, can you describe that? Is that a set period of time? Is the training environment, a one-day workshop or a 6 weeks, or what does that look like? And then when you get it into the work environment, how much interaction do you have with them in those levels as well?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it really depends on the organization. Now, with, for example, the bank that I was coaching, I had the privilege of journeying with my clients over 6 months, a 6 months period, and that involved, obviously at the start, a group session, and that's how a typical strength session would look like. But bringing them also out of the classroom setting into their work environment. So I had the opportunity of going down to their workspaces, their workplaces, having the one-on-one sessions with them, having team sessions with them, and at the same time, even interacting with the team members. Now, I believe that it's important that strengths doesn't just reside in the participant receiving it. It's also important that the teams understand the value of strengths and apply those strengths into their own teams as well, which is why I'm really for strengths-based teams and strengths-based leadership. It's important that the leaders that we coach also apply it with their teams, that they understand the strengths methodology, and they obviously operate in it, invest in it, and that's only through that can we see application and results. And that's really in the work environment. So yes, I had the benefit of being in their offices, in their spaces, to really just observe them and then coach them through the observations.
And when you were hired to come in and do this, were you given a brief? I guess you're introduced to these high performance people that they wanted you to work with, and you said there were 30 of them. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So when you have the 30, certainly some of them are going to be more keen and more receptive to the whole strengths idea than others. How do you deal with the variance in engagement with the tool itself and your consulting?
Well, that's a very good question. Typically when a client approaches me, and in this case, the bank, it was really from the learning and development team. So it's really the human resource development team that approached me. Strengths was really introduced to them to be a tool for greater awareness of their own strengths. But I pitched it to them that it's more than that. I think we all believe in the value of investing in strengths for performance. So as a result of that, I came up with this 6 months program to show them that at the end of 6 months, they will see results. And I communicated this to every one of them individually as well. Now, and this is really based on my analysis of their profiles. If each and every one of them had an achiever in their top 5, you would believe that they want to see achievement and results. And it's important to understand where the clients are coming from. And when you understand their needs and their wants, you're better able to design that program for them. But it's also at the same time to assure them that that achievement does follow investing in strengths. And we see the literature in that. We see many case studies and many stories of that. So one of the ways in which I did that also was to share our previous case studies. And some examples which I prepared, I've got 2 examples where strengths was applied professionally in a person's job, and they saw themselves achieving the top performer, sales performer, within 3 to 6 months. Now that's a real case study for you. Obviously, I can't reveal identities, but case studies like this would help the client sit up and go, that's what I want too. how did you achieve that? How did you help this person achieve that? And that's where we go into just uncovering their strengths, applying it, and coming up with an individual action plan that would span over 6 months, and then obviously tracking the results as it comes out. It's not an easy task, but as long as the client or the person I'm coaching is willing to share those 5 or 6 steps and share the results, it's also important to celebrate those results, and then and only then will you understand what levels of achievement that they have attained for themselves. So this is also about bringing them to awareness of their achievements. Some people they attribute it to other causes, they attribute it to other interventions, but it's also important to draw them back to see how strengths has been pivotal in helping them achieve those results for them. Now, obviously, it's not just in the professional field. Another example that that's on my mind was how I coached this lady, and she's a high performer, and she told me that she's got 2 children, and all this time when she was a working mother, she never had the opportunity of going back to read to her 2 daughters and also to put them to bed. Now she has belief in her top 5, and that's something that she felt really close to her heart. It was almost like belief was just shouting out to her that as a mother she needed to do this. And that's where I sat down with her, and she came up with a very simple task, one of which was to speak to her boss about the need for her to go back at a certain time. And that's what she did. So over 6 months, she took those steps, and at the end of 6 months, when she sat down with me, she had effectively spent the past 3 to 4 months having dinner with her daughters, reading to them, and putting them to bed. She leaves the office at 5:30 sharp. She gets back home just in time for dinner. She spends the few hours with the daughters, and after they go to bed, she opens her laptop at 8:45 to start work again. So that's something that we can achieve also in our personal arenas. And this person obviously had belief in her top 5, but she also had discipline. So it was very important that we identified those, and of course attributed to how she took those little steps and invested in her strengths to achieve those results.
Very good. When you're talking to your to the 30 high performance managers and you're following their progress with this intervention, how do you track those results? You kept saying that it was important to track the results and talk about those and celebrate them. How do you track them?
Well, that's also a very good question. That's a tool that I use, and when it comes to those tools, I tend to want to define some aspects of results so that it's easy for us to see them. So what we do is short of compartmentalizing certain behaviors and of course certain outcomes, I use that tool to demonstrate to the client that they're achieving it in this arenas, this fields, so that it's not something that is that they can't grasp. It's something that they acknowledge to be the fields of results that they're interested in. So let me give you an example. If it's an example around leading their team, so if it's a real scenario, and one of the managers that I coached had certain issues with leading the team. So after coaching the client, we realized that we zoomed in on some aspects of communication. So we decided to tackle communication as the outcome, as the theme that we wanted to track. So we broke it down into the various forms of communications, the various types of communications, the frequency in which they did communicate, and obviously the platforms they communicated in. And breaking that down helped also in terms of it's quantifiable. When you measure the number of times you've communicated within 6 months, that's actually quite surprising because we don't measure that. When you talk about the design of the communication platforms, so specifically what they talk about during the sessions, we take note of that as well. So we list it down, and when we do that, and we show it to the client, the more often than not, they're really surprised at what they've been able to achieve. Obviously, just zooming in on communication, we then are able to package all of these results together into the 6 months intervention. We show it to the client, and then we ask, what's the aftermath of that? And I also have the opportunity to speak with the team members who would then clearly articulate that those sessions have been helpful in what sense, and we track that as achievements as well. So it's actually it's not rocket science, but it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of having to understand the client's needs, but it also takes a lot of analysis and design.
Well, as you often hear, if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. So it is so key, isn't it, to be able to demonstrate the change that's meaningful to the corporation. So when you get a job as a consultant and a corporation brings you in and gives you 30 people and they say, this is the team that we want you to work with, not all 30 of those people necessarily want to be there. Not all 30 want to be involved in that engagement. How do you cope with those who really are not engaged in the process?
Well, yeah, you sort of asked that question in the beginning, and I think I'll just put it into three very important themes here. Number one would be that it's the organization itself that holds the key to having their employees engaged. So I think employee engagement is one other crucial factor. When the 30 were identified and placed on this talent program, I worked with the human resource development team to communicate to them that the organization was investing in them, was investing in by obviously giving them the resources, giving them this program for them to achieve results. They were identified out of a worldwide employee count of 20,000. So the 30 in the Singapore office obviously were the critical talent they wanted to develop. So that's from the organization, communicating very clearly that they were 30 identified talents. The second one would be where we come in with Gallup-Strengths Finder. Now, once you've shown them the tool and you've seen, they see for themselves what the Strengths Finders is about, they understand their full spectrum of the 34 talents and strengths, and they understand what it really means to invest in the top 5 and to spend time coming up with an action plan. They then begin to realize that this is something that they can take for themselves. So I think it's a matter of choice, but once they are aware of the power of the tool and the instrument towards helping them to achieve success, many of them tend to sit up and go, this is something that might be useful for me. I think the third would be obviously the value add of the coach. And us as coaches, we know the value of this. We know that it's important for us to design and package something that they see to be credible, that they see is obviously steeped in research and has delivered results in the past. So as coaches, we need to come prepared. We need to understand the needs and the vision or even the mission statement of the organization. We need to do our homework essentially and put together something that we believe will work for our clients. And in this case, it was the 30 individuals. And for each and every one of them, understanding their needs and wants was something that I particularly put a lot of effort and time into. So I think with these 3 areas, it really helped with this 6 months program. I think some of the things that we did at the end when we celebrated the results really brought us closer. So this was a time when it was the Mooncake Festival, and we brought in some mooncake, and that's when over mooncake, everything just opens up. So lots of stories to tell, and a lot of them started to share about their success stories in a very informal, very open, casual way. And I think that's the important element of it, where we need to design for generative conversations to occur, where people feel comfortable to share about their strengths and their application and their achievements. I think that's something that as coaches we do, and we have to intentionally design towards.
And once you've completed this 6 month, in this case, successful program within a corporation, how do you hand it over to them to continue the work? Because once your contract ends, and perhaps you'll go back and do further work in the future, but when you hand it over, how do you educate the HR department or whoever it is that's going to sort of take ownership of that and move it, keep it moving forward?
And I just love your questions. You're just making me reveal all of my secrets, so that's great. Well, one of the things that as a coach I need to do is to look at sustainability. Obviously, a full report of the triple-A approach is given to them. The achievements are also articulated for them, so that they all know that there were results as a result of this program. But more importantly, it's also about the extension of conversations to the team. So I mentioned this before. The 30 individuals, if they don't apply them within their teams, it's not going to be sustainable. Now, this is something that they come to realize on their own. So in fact, I'm glad to announce that many of them have actually started to have strengths conversations with their teams. They've started to get their teams to also uncover their strengths. They've started to use the strengths language, which, by the way, is a very easy language to pick up. And I think that's one of the positives about this, about Gallup's Strengths Finders, is the fact that it's easy language to just pick up, and it's something that that as leaders we use on a daily basis when we talk about a person's strengths. So many of them have continued the conversations with the teams. Well, the best part is many of them have come back to engage me to work with their teams. So I have another model that I'd like to show, and this is what I call the model for team success. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to toggle over so you can see it. The model for team success is something that I use, and it's adapted from a book by Patrick Lencioni on the 5 dysfunctions of teams. And as you can see, it's about the absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and attention to results. Now, as a strengths coach and as fellow believers in the strengths movement, we also understand that strengths is a very positive oriented tool, something that we call positive psychology. So we tend to look a lot at the negatives, and Patrick Lencioni was no different. He focused on the 5 dysfunctions. Now I've changed that around to look at the 5 C's, but from a more positive perspective. So in terms of the absence of trust, I talked about the connection through strengths. In terms of the fear of conflict, I looked at communication of ideas and views. In terms of lack of commitment, we looked at collaboration of resource and efforts. Inattention to results, we looked at celebration of achievements, either individually or as a team. And in terms of avoidance of accountability, we looked at common purpose and shared goals. So in that sense, it's important that we work this through the teams to ensure that there's sustainability in it. And I help the leaders of these teams to continue conversations with their team members using this model of team success. Now, this is something that I can leave with the teams because they understand the process that's the 5 C's, I call it, that they will have to implement with the teams so that they can continue to see results through application of strengths as a team. And obviously, that's one critical way that I ensure sustainability.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I really do appreciate your sharing that with us, Kenneth. I know each coach and consultant out there will have their own instruments and twist on things that they use, but they're not always willing to share the resources. So thank you for that. We really appreciate that. That's an excellent tool. I can see how that could be used very effectively in teams. Jim, is there any questions or anything from your side?
Yeah, Kenneth, I want to ask you, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, ask you questions personally, what's the best way to do that? Is there a website or a Twitter handle, or what's the best way for folks to interact with you?
Well, just look me up on the strengths, the Gallup-Strengths coaching website. My profile is there, my contact details are there. I'm very happy to share. In fact, and thanks for asking those questions. You do realize I prepared to answer them. So I'm very open about the tools that I use. And if anyone's interested to just learn more, they can get in touch with me through the Strengths Coaching Center. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell individuals. So the coaches directory is found at the Gallup Strengths Center. So just head out to Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. Scroll down. Oh, you'll need to roll down a little bit. It says coaching directory, and if you select that, we actually have a brand new coaching directory out there that we're continually to update and add things to. And so if you haven't been out there in a while and you're a coach, you should go out and take a look at your own. Just make sure we got everything right from that set. But that is at coaching. That's at the Gallup Strengths Center, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. So, well, Ann, any other final thoughts from you as we begin to wrap this up?
No, look, I think that was great. A lot of good information in there, Kenneth, and thanks again for joining us today. Certainly appreciate your willingness to come, especially on a public holiday in Singapore, to come in and do Called to Coach with us, and look forward to seeing you again soon in Singapore, I'm sure.
No, very, very dedicated as well, Kenneth. Thank you again for doing that. I'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. Send us your questions, comments in an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can catch the recorded audio and video of this program, and as well as all the past ones we have. Links to our Facebook page and YouTube group and all those other great social media. Links are all on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you have an idea for a blog post and you'd like to share that with us, we are interviewing guest writers, so send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, and in the subject line put guest blogger, and that will get it to the right places so we can consider it. For the coaches blog, we're doing some 30,000 views to the coaches blog, so if you want a writer and you want to get some exposure to that, we get some good traffic out there on coaches blog. Love to have you do that as well. And you want to highlight do we have any sessions, any training coming up there in the Asia region that you want to highlight real quick?
Well, I tell you, there is some. I'm not 100% sure of all the dates across all of the Asia-Pacific region, but you can go onto Gallup Strength Center, and certainly the dates that have already been published. I think there's one in Singapore, January 25th to 29th, a certification course. I can tell you that in Sydney, we're closing in on our last ones for the year, so we have a high performance management December 1st and 2nd, and then our last accelerated coaching course would be on December 11th. Yeah, the 11th to 12th to 17th. I think I've said it 7th to the 11th. I've said it so many times I've forgotten. Anyhow, so those will be the last ones we have for the year. But looking forward to welcoming some new coaches in that way. Yeah,
and just a reminder of this: since these nature of YouTube videos are time shifted, it may be well past those dates, and you had the right answer in saying out at the Gallup Strength Center. We list them all the time. So again, scroll down near the coaches area, and you can see courses that'll be available, and the most up-to-date times for all of them are available right there. We want to thank everyone for joining us today, and if you enjoyed it, we always encourage you to share it. And with that, we look forward to the next Call to Coach, and we'll say goodbye, everyone.